My name is David Scott. I'm from the Swan Lake First Nation, and I'm the environmental specialist here, as well as a spiritual leader for the community. From a traditional perspective, I keep an eye on plant life, insect life, bird life, river systems, creek systems, tributaries, the lakes from Pelican Lake all the way to Grassy Lake is the area that I monitor. I look at the different ecosystems. From a traditional perspective, I share that with Western scientists. I started focusing on youth very early on, only because of my own experiences with my concerns regarding the changes that we were seeing in and around our community. And recently I've been focusing heavily on the youth. One, because they're questioning what's happening out there, they want to learn. And the other is, it's their lives we're dealing with when we're talking about environmental change. They're going to see the worst of climate change. I'll probably be pushing up daisies long before the worst of that hits us. So I think it's important that youth are engaged in environmental issues, particularly from a traditional perspective. Western science is one thing, but the indigenous perspective and the indigenous knowledge that's here has to be transferred. And that's my role right now, is to transfer my knowledge to the next generation of youth that are coming up. We built that dam back in the 80s to do irrigation for potatoes. I got in trouble for doing that to begin with, because we didn't talk to the old people. And they pointed the finger directly at me and said, "You should have known better. You don't do things like that." So I took that, and then I kind of looked after that dam area ever since it's been put up. And so recently, because the dam was in danger of washing out, we put in a plan to lower it. And again, the reserve is kind of evenly split on that. They wanted us to put it back to its natural state. And then there's others that see a value in holding back water on land, which is, I'm one of those people. But we saw an opportunity there too, as well, as to do some scientific and indigenous experiments to figure out how to deal with that. And then of course to create a recreational area within the boundaries of the reserve. So that's what we've been doing in that area. Right now I'm doing some traditional planting in the area, like wheat, things that we normally would have had in that valley. And then the other thing is to transplant in our traditional way and using the plants that are there now. Sometimes when we bring in plants from other areas, they don't do so well, only because they're not natural plants in my eyes. So I like to use the plants that are right around us. And this drought has really exposed some of the early predictions that the old people made about that lake and some of the changes that were going to come. And now we're seeing that, although in a very accelerated form. Our lake right now, from my perspective, is a dead lake. There's not a lot we can do with that lake right at the moment. The last time that lake drained or went low was from oral histories around 1947, 1948, but never this bad. And the use of that lake is lost to our people. In the last 7 years, we've used that lake in the wintertime only twice, and with very, very minimal fishing in the lake itself. A lot of upstream activities concern us, and what's happening up there. It's always concerned us since they did the water control structure at Ninette in 1967. Our valley has been in trouble ever since that time. So that's why I keep a close eye on what's happening in the river in the lakes and in the sloughs. There's a lot of drastic changes. We don't have muskrats in that lake anymore. They're more in the river, and not a whole lot. So we have some concerns. Food sources are gone. Medicines, all of that is gone from that lake now. In areas where there's intensive agricultural activities, our people are afraid to use the medicines that are around us because of potential chemicals and poisons in those sources. So we're going now to areas around the Steinbach and then up far north as Island Lake, and north of Peguis around Douglas Point is where we're doing more and more of our medicine picking. Yeah, so it costs our people a lot of money to do things like that, and all of that is because of the unhealthy waterways we have down here. And in my view, it's because of agricultural activity. I have no doubt in my mind that that's what it is. Our land at Indian Gardens is called north of Rathwell, Manitoba. What we did there, I'll give you a little bit of history on that area firstly. Our original chief here, the first chief, the one that signed Treaty 1 was Chief Yellowquill. We're the descendants of that chief. And he held that land until his death in 1910. And what they did was they created that reserve under the Indian Act rather than treaty land. And what they did is they removed that land, they detached that land from the waterway. And if you understand reserves, most reserves are attached to some waterway. And so what we did is we purchased the land down to the Assiniboine River down there, and we got a nice big piece of land there that it's agricultural land, not very productive because it's a flood zone. So what we're planning to do is to make it into a woodlot, to make forest out of there and an area for recreation for our people to go to that land. We've been displaced from that land since 1910. Not very many of us go up into that area. It's an environmentally sensitive area. And that's one of the things that I do in that area is to monitor what's happening, particularly from chemicals, because it's in a deep valley. So you get a lot of that. The filtering systems aren't there anymore, so creating that would benefit that whole area. In my traditional way of looking at these things, I've been trying to find a balance between where Western science can meet indigenous knowledge, and this particular thing, these chemicals and whatever those machines are, that benefits me because I need to understand that as well. We do live in a Western methodologies have impacted our communities and our land. And therefore there's a place for Western scientific methodologies in trying to understand what's going on. But what I don't want is for Western science to overpower indigenous knowledge. There has to be a balance there. And there's an intrinsic value in indigenous knowledge, and it has to be recognized by all scientists that come here. And that's my role right now in the projects that I work on for Swan Lake Reserve, is to make sure Western science doesn't overpower that. It's in my eyes far more valuable than Western science. The one thing I always try and teach our people is that we should never try and make the environment subservient to us. We should live with it, try and understand it, just don't try and overpower it. It's better to live with it than to destroy it. Destruction of all of this, the environment around us, is causing a lot of problems, health-wise, spiritually, mentally. All of those things are being taken away because of Western activities. And the second thing that I try to instill in our youth is that to take ownership of our lives as Anishinaabe people to live in this land. That's our teachings. That's our covenant with the environment, is to live with it in peace, not to overpower it. That's not our way of thinking. And so in order for us to do that, we have to understand what's happening right now, what happened before and what is happening right now. That's what our young people need to learn.